Hey everyone, good evening and welcome. It's time for our monthly live stream brought direct to your society page. We're very excited to be bringing these live streams direct to you, telling you all about what's going on in the wildlife vet world. So tonight, as normal, we're going to have Dr. Peter Rogers joining us along with our panel from 3 different universities so that we can talk all things wildlife vet. So feel free to send in your questions and your comments in the comments box of this live stream where you're watching it, and we'll aim to answer it tonight. So my name is Roger, and I'm from the Expedition Project. So we've been working with the University of Nottingham, University of Edinburgh, and RVC in London since sort of this time last year, actually. And in conjunction with all of them, we've been developing some amazing wildlife vet online courses that are clinically EMS approved, as well as a whole lot of other features and topics as well, which has been fantastic. So if you're new to these live streams, if you're new to the Expedition Project, if you're new to these courses, then please check them out, and you can go and find out everything on the Expedition Project website. But for now, just send us a quick comment just to say where you're watching this from, so we know where you are. Obviously, things are so different these days with universities slowly going back, but obviously not everyone is physically at universities yet. So if you're not at any of those 3 locations, then just let us know where you're watching this from. It'd be great to hear from you. So we're going to start to introduce our panel now. So we're going to bring in a panel from the 3 different universities. So from Edinburgh, from Nottingham, and from RVC in London. So one at a time, let's bring in the panel so we can have a little chat, meet them. First up, we've got Nirvana from the University of Edinburgh. Hey, Nirvana, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. What's going on in Edinburgh these days?
What's going on in Edinburgh? So it's all happening. Everyone's back on campus now, first years through to final years. So it's all getting quite busy, but just managed to finish up the cheetah course and both the rhino courses in betwixt everything, and really enjoying it.
Amazing. Fantastic. Okay, so we'll get back to you with some questions in a bit. Also from University of Edinburgh, we've got Kat joining us. Let's see if Kat's there. Can you hear us, Kat? Oh, no, it seems like Kat's frozen, so we'll leave Kat for now. Let's move on to University of Nottingham, and we've got Izzy joining us from University of Nottingham. Hey, Izzy, how are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. What's happening in Nottingham these days?
Oh, well, yeah, same as Edinburgh. Everyone's coming back now. We've got our new freshers and things, and yeah, everyone in 3rd year is just at home doing projects. So
Busy though? What's going on?
Yeah, everything's starting up again now. So everyone's going back to societies and things. That's really great. So yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Okay, so let's move down to London now and an RVC and bring in Yashu. Hey, Yashu, how are you?
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, so nice to see you guys all again. How's things going? I know you're not actually in London now, even though you're representing London, but how are things where you are?
Well, I'm in Singapore, but RVC is doing great because everyone's all over the place. We get to see like all kinds of different countries and conditions, so we're all great.
It's crazy times, isn't it? It's so weird when you think back what we're actually going through right now, but I think we're all actually handling it so well and adapting to all these little things that we're now having to live through, which is quite fascinating. Let's give a try with Kat again and see if she is able to join us this time. Let's have a look. There she is. Hey, Kat.
Hey, everyone.
How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Just technological issues as always with these things.
So fantastic. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us tonight. So those of you that have actually watched these monthly live streams before, some of these faces will be very familiar. 2 new faces tonight in Izzy and Kat that are joining us. But yeah, looking forward to cracking on with this. But let's just have a little preview to show you some of the stuff that we have been talking about the last few months, and then some of the things we're going to talk about in this live stream tonight, and then basically just get to it and bring in Dr. Rogers. But let's have a little look at this first. So fantastic stuff there. So just before we get Dr. Peter Rogers in on the live stream, just give you a quick update. So over the last few months, we've brought out a module specifically on cheetah. We've then moved on to rhino, and we're just about to launch a module on pangolins. And then up next is going to be elephants. So we're all so excited as we've been working through these modules, all parts of the big course, which is the Wildlife Vet Online course. So I know the panel have gone through what we've got available already now, and they're going to start to ask Dr. Rogers some questions on that. The main sort of focus and the topic for tonight is going to be just doing a little recap on the pangolins, which is about to be released, and then moving on elephants. But if you've got any other questions about the cheetah module, about the rhinos, have you done that, or anything else about what it's like to be a wildlife vet, what it's like working in South Africa, and any other questions for Dr. Peter Rogers, then please just post in the comments of where you're watching it right now, and we will we'll aim to answer that tonight. So let's see if Dr. Rogers is ready for us. We're going to introduce him now. I might just replace Kat's live stream, so I think she's frozen from there. So let's swap that. There we go. Perfect. Okay, let's see if Peter is ready for us. There he is. Hey, Peter, how are you?
No, good, thanks. How are you guys?
Fantastic. So good to have you back again. So Peter, we've got two new faces on the panel tonight. We've got Izzy from Nottingham stepping in for Molly, and we've got Kat, who's going to be joining Nirvana from Edinburgh, and then obviously Yashu, who you recognize from the last couple of streams. So you've just been for a cycle before this. How's things in Hoedspruit, South Africa?
Yeah, I went for a cycle. I was a bit late, so I've just got in now. I was riding in a little wildlife estate where I live. So there are lions around, this whole estate. So it was in the dark. So I must have had a couple of shivers going up and down my spine. But I've just got in now, literally. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us once again. As I mentioned before, for those of you that missed the previous live streams, you can go and watch those on replay and see the discussions that we've been having. As I mentioned, talking about cheetah, talking about rhino, talking about pangolins last month as well. And now this month, we can talk a little bit more about pangolins and then go into elephants. But if you've got any other questions, please just fire them through. So I wonder, Peter, we've got a few sort of new viewers joining in tonight because university's just starting to start up again in Nottingham, in Edinburgh, and at RVC. So we got some freshers starting that are very interested to hear from you. I wonder if you could just give us just a little quick overview of you, who you are, and what you've been up to, obviously, the last few decades.
Okay, to start off with, I'm definitely the most good-looking vet in Hoedspruit. Maybe it's because I'm the only one. That might have something to do with it. No, anyway, yeah. So I qualified in 1984 in Pretoria, and then I did 3 years private practice, and then I worked. I was fortunate enough to get a job with the then Natal Parks Board in Natal, the home of the white rhino, and I worked there mainly with white and black rhino for 7 years, and then I worked at the Hoedspruit Cheetah Project just outside of town here for 7 years. And during that time, I started my own practice. So I've been working on my own, just a purely wildlife. Well, myself, a wildlife vet, basically since 1987 up until now. I'm actually in my hospital at the moment, so we've got a domestic animal side to our practice as well, and a lady that runs that for me. And I must say, now and again, I still every second weekend I'm on call, and I must say I really enjoy working with the smallies. They call them the smallies. I'm not up to date, as completely up to date as one would be if you're a general small animal practitioner. But I like working with the people, and if I can't handle something, I just tell them to come back on Monday when my colleague will be there. So yeah.
Amazing.
So I really work with all species now. The last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've been working a lot with pangolins. So yeah, that was why this last module was the pangolin one. Yeah, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
So of the 4 modules now, if we include the elephants, which you're working on at the moment for us, of those sort of four, well, I suppose three modules: rhinos, cheetah. Oh no, 4: rhinos, cheetah, pangolin, and elephants. What's been your favorite so far of like putting these together?
I must say that the cheetah and the rhino, it was very easy. It was like sort of second nature because I've done these sort of presentations so many times, and I've worked with these animals for so many years. But the pangolin was quite a challenge because the previous 2 I can do in my sleep, but the pangolin I had to sort of like rehearse, and it's a new field. There's only probably in the world, there's only 2 of us that are working on these pangolins to this sort of high level, of medicine. So we're learning, honestly, daily, on a daily basis. So you'll see a lot of the stuff we do is maybe a bit speculative and it's not really involved in science, but there's a lot of things that we've learned, that in the past, people used to bring in poached pangolins that had been, confiscated in a sting, and they'd look all right. And then we'd let them go. But in retrospect, in hindsight, I think every single one died. Because if you look at their bloods, and that's the most important thing to look at when they come in, you look at their bloods, you see actually, because some of them have been in captivity in a boot of a car or in a bucket or something for like 2 weeks. So they're extremely dehydrated, they're hypoproteinemic, they're pretty much starved, and some of them develop biliary, and you'll see that all on the presentation, but they seem to hide these sort of symptoms very well. So what looks like a healthy pangolin, and in fact, another thing is most of them have got pneumonia. So what looks like a healthy pangolin when it comes in is 9 times out of 10 is not. So they are very, very difficult to manage.
So when you actually get a pangolin that comes in that has then been handed over you from a sting operation or something like that, is it mainly things like the dehydration and malnourishment and stuff like that are the first sort of signs that you would see? Yeah,
but again, you've got to look for them. Sometimes they come in, they're visibly weak, then they've been in captivity maybe for longer than 2 weeks, but sometimes they can be in really bad shape physiologically and you don't notice it. You don't notice it until you start doing the bloods.
Well, I mean, let's stay on pangolins for a while now that we've been talking about that. Nirvana from Edinburgh, I mean, obviously such a specialized sort of species, having to work with pangolins, something like that. Is that something you'd be interested in working with in the future?
Hugely. I think it's fascinating. It's just thinking in my mind, like Peter was saying, that this kind of intensive care that these pangolins are now receiving, just purely because people are taking the time and to follow up whether these pangolins are surviving in the wild, and actually what is the best care that we can be providing. And wouldn't it be amazing to be part of something that was actively seeking the answers to those questions? I do have one quick question for Peter, if that's okay. Peter, I suppose when you're having to take care of these pangolins, do you receive any supportive funding from any kind of local conservation work, or does that have to come out of the pocket of the practice?
Yeah, you see, that's something it's always to be honest, today we had a discussion, and the 2 centers that myself and another practice in Johannesburg, by the time, say we release a pangolin at about, say, 4 weeks after it's coming in, it's the costs in the region of about 60,000 Rand. So, that's a hell of a lot of money. And up until now, I've been carrying it myself. But there are sort of people that are coming, and we are doing fundraisers, where we can. But with COVID and the sort of general depressed world economy, it's damn difficult at this stage. So the funding is a big problem, and it's labor intensive. This is a problem, something like a rhino, to rear a baby rhino, or orphan cheetahs or whatever. That is very, very easy, cost-wise, and actually easy. Pangolins are a nightmare. I promise you, they're an absolute nightmare, because they've all got individual personalities and characters. Some of them, you'll see, we put them on the ground at night because that's where they're nocturnal. They feed at night, and some of them just bolt. Some of them just run. Some of them look like they've been in captivity their whole lives, and they just eat ants in front of you. What I'm really alluding to here is that, there's no artificial diet you can give them, so they've got to go and eat every night, and they're nocturnal, so you've got people walking with them, and you can lose them. So we put lights on the back of their scales and all this sort of thing. So, but the individual behaviors are terrible. Some of them just put them on the ground and they bolt. So there's no pattern to them, and they are very, very difficult. They are very, very. I always thought horses love dying, but pangolins also love dying.
How about you, Izzy? So, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Like, only a few years ago that I started to learn exactly what pangolins were. It's such an unknown species, isn't it? I mean, how much did you know about them sort of before starting to hear about some of the things that we were going to be talking about here?
So I was actually really lucky. So as I said I've sent a video about myself, which should be uploaded soon on the ambassadors page. I used to live in Asia when I was younger, and there are like the Asian pangolins and the African pangolins. So when I was younger, I went to a national park in Vietnam, and they had a group of pangolins. I think they were like the Sunda pangolins. I don't know if that's the correct name for them, but yeah, I think they were having the same problems as you kind of mentioned. They said like they just love dying, like everything. They have every problem, and then obviously because they've often come in from people dealing with them in the illegal wildlife trade, then they have so many like secondary problems like infections and things. But I was just wondering if I could ask a question like off the back of that as well, kind of like what Nirvana did. So they were saying when I was in this national park that pangolins are so like easily stressed, and sometimes you can bring them in and they can just kind of like die of stress. I don't know whether that's true, but I was just wondering how you kind of overcame those problems of them being so like stressed out and such like elusive species.
Did you get that, Peter? Can you hear?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know whether it's my signal or yours, but I've got the gist of it. Yeah. You know, that's something, you know, that was brought home to me again this week. They are so stress susceptible. You know, that's why, and you'll see also in the presentation is that when we work with them, they're only under anesthetic. It sounds you know quite severe, but we use this inhalation anesthetic isoflurane, and you know we just give them like a cotton ball soaked in it, and they just grasp it, you know, in front of their nose. They go to sleep, and then we maintain them with a mask. So every single procedure we do is they're sleeping. They're not aware of what's going on, and the main thing is for that stress. And you've got to realize that as soon as you've got that animal right, you know, because you walk with it, and as soon as it's gaining weight, and yes, you know, I'm actually giving away this whole presentation now. You won't even have to buy it. As soon as the animal is ready to go, you know, it's weight-wise, blood-wise, everything, then it's got to go. You can't wait one day too long. And I'll tell you why I say this is fairly recently we had one that was ready to go. It was perfect. But then it was going into quite a bad area, so they wanted to get telemetry to track it. And there was a delay somehow in the customs, and the telemetry was delayed by a week. And in that week, that pangolin just went down, it crashed, and it actually died. So when it's ready to go, it's got to go. And you know, we had a meeting today with all the conservation officials here in the country, and you know, these are the sort of things that have been brought home to us. So when the animal is ready to go, it doesn't matter who's not here or nobody's there. The person who's responsible is not there. It's got to go. So they are incredibly stress susceptible. They develop ulcers, and we also found that some of them get so stressed they might even look like they're putting on weight, and then all of a sudden they start regurgitating, and then you know when they start doing that they're going to die. And when you open them up, you half expect to see an ulcer or something, but you don't. You find you get a hyperplasia of the pylorus valve, so that the food cannot go from the stomach into the duodenum. We don't know why that is. But these are all the sort of things that we're finding out as we go along. And then, of course, clinical babesiosis. They all carry babesia parasites, pyroplasms. It's a normal finding on a blood smear. But under stress conditions, again, it can just take over, and they can actually die of babesiosis. So, gee, I'll tell you, it's a miracle if we can even get one through. And having said that, it's something that Nirvana mentioned just now, the costs. What I alluded to as well was the costs. The costs are astronomical, and when you think that about 300,000 pangolins are being poached every year, that's what we know of, 300,000. You know, by saving one at this astronomical cost, we're not saving the species. So I look at it from a different point of view, and the biggest I think the biggest advantage we can, or the biggest sort of, I'm trying to think, the biggest advantage we have with this, having this pangolin in our possession, is to be able to educate the locals, the local community, the local school children. To me, that is actually more, and it might sound terrible. To me, that money is not saving on that pangolin, because by saving one pangolin, not going to save the species. But to me, education is the big thing. So when we're working on these animals again, when it's asleep, I let the school children come in, the local community, and it's an educational tool. That to me justifies spending that 60 or 70,000 rand more than actually on saving that individual pangolin itself. I know it might sound mercenary, it might sound terrible, but you know, by saving one pangolin for that cost, and you've got so many thousands of millions of hungry people in this continent. We've got to somehow try and justify it better than just saving that one particular pangolin. So to me, education. And I know I've met with a lot of opposition because there's a lot of, once I've got this is my pangolin and nobody's allowed to see it. That sort of, and it's so stress susceptible, you can't look at it. And, to me, that's defeating the whole object of the exercise. So more recently now, I've been putting more, the better. I mean, not people. You there?
Oh, yeah, we've got you.
Don't put it on social media. Yeah. So anyway, that's the story. Though it's more about education than actually saving a particular animal. A rhino's different. It's so easy to rear and not expensive at all. But a pangolin is a lot of time and effort and medication.
So we've got some questions coming in from the audience, which we're going to get to in a minute, and I just want to move onto Yashu and Katrina just very briefly, get a sort of maybe initial question or comment from them, and then we're going to start to take some questions from the viewers and you guys watching at home. Just remember, you can post your questions in the comments, and so we're talking about pangolins, talking about elephants, and if you've got questions about rhino or cheetah, which were the previous modules in discussion, feel free to send those through as well. So Yashu, moving on to you. Obviously, where you are right now in Singapore, I mean, do you see a lot of pangolins around there?
Well, certainly there's not a lot to go around, unfortunately. But yeah, being from Singapore, I feel like I've definitely had more exposure to pangolins. I think the government has done its part, but there's only so much you can do with such a vulnerable species. I do have a pangolin question. Do we have time? Okay. So I just entered 3rd year, and we were learning about physical examinations and triage. And Peter, I was wondering how you detect hypovolemic shock in pangolins, because I know probably some of the traditional ways don't actually work.
Yeah, this is the way we do it. Really, is just by looking at the blood. We take blood, and you'll see in the actual the program itself that where do you find blood? Where do you find a blood vessel on a pangolin? And what you do is we anesthetize them, and we lie them flat on their backs, and in the middle, just about 1 to 2 centimeters caudal to the anus, is a thick what they call a coccygeal vein. You can't actually see it. You can't visualize it. But we use a butterfly. Do you guys know what a butterfly gelco is? Anyway, you'll see it on the presentation. It's like a catheter, and it's attached to a pipe, an administration or a collection pipe. And we stick it in at 45 degrees blind, and you hit it every single time. Even I, at my old age, can find that vein. And we take blood, and you look at the PCB, and you look at the various factors, and you'll see quickly how dehydrated these animals are. And also, when they're very dehydrated, the eyes are sunken in, the belly is sunken in, the skin, the belly skin is very, very soft. So when you pick it up, you can actually, it does tent, So it's pretty easy to see if they're dehydrated. And to be honest, everyone is. And then, of course, they're often anemic, and then definitely hyperproteinemic as well.
Good question. So Kat, what about you? What are your thoughts on pangolins in general?
Yeah, hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Yeah, I think as all wildlife species, they are amazing, and I think part of the reason for me that I want to do wildlife medicine is that factor of the unknown, and being breeding and dealing with species where maybe not a lot is known. So I don't know. Peter, do you know anyone who's doing research projects relating to anything on pangolins or anything like that?
Yeah, at the moment there's just one or two ladies. There's a Dr. Karen Lawrence in Johannesburg. It's such a new field, because in the past, I promise you, up until 3 years ago, we just used to let them go, and then we realized what we were doing. So we're literally learning on our feet. So I know the one lady, the vet in Johannesburg, she's doing her master's or PhD on babesiosis. But there's so much more room. And there's a young vet nurse who's working with me. She's going to be doing her master's on the behavior of pangolins, because now that you've got telemetry and all that sort of thing, you can actually track them. And even with the satellite tracking, you don't have to be with them all the time. So there is so much. It's a brand new field. It's almost, and it's a privilege for us to be, there at the beginning. It's very, very exciting, and there is so much more still to learn. So much more still to learn. That's why I think this presentation is quite unique in a way, because there's only basically 2 of us, I think, that do it.
I mean, absolutely fascinating. So just to remind us, everyone, like the Dr. Peter Rogers' pangolin presentation is just about to be launched. We're just doing the finishing touches on it now. So that's a module which is a part of the bigger picture Wildlife Vet Online course, which we have been developing over the last few months in conjunction with University of Edinburgh, University of Nottingham, and RVC in London. So it's been an amazing journey for us in getting this sort of built. The first module was cheetah, second module, part 1 and 2 was rhino. Pangolin's about to be released, and then after that will be elephants. So we're gonna start to take some sort of viewer questions now. But just before we get into that, so let's just have a quick video just to give you a little bit of a background on the pangolin module and a bit about pangolins in general. So watch this absolutely fascinating video.
I've been involved with the wildlife industry for 35 years, and I think I've seen a pangolin in the wild maybe twice. They're very, very shy, and they're nocturnal animals, so it's a privilege in a way. It's not something people see every day. I'm Peter Rogers. I'm a wildlife vet working largely in the Greater Kruger Park. And this video is really about raising awareness of the plight of the pangolin. To approach a pangolin, once you've got a pangolin in sight, it's got no defense mechanism in which to ward a person off. You can simply just go and pick it up. And then what they do is they keep them in containers, sometimes for weeks, until they find a suitable buyer. We have now been appointed at ProVet as you can call it the sanctuary or the rehabilitation first aid emergency treatment hospital for all the pangolins in this area. So we see them first, usually in very, very poor condition, dehydrated, stressed as anything. And it's up to us to get them back to where they're actually in a fit state to be released again. This little pangolin's name is Aura. The reason she's called Aura is because she came in on a very, very windy night, and she was confiscated in a sting. She was brought to us in an extremely dehydrated and emaciated condition. This is about 4 weeks ago now, and it is so exciting and so rewarding to see how she has come this far, that she's now strong enough to look after herself and fend for herself. She's just digging for food and eating ants. I mean, they eat thousands and thousands and thousands of ants every day. It's very labor intensive to look after them, take them out walking at night, bearing in mind that they eat for 8 to 10 hours a day. So whoever walks with them has got to spend the whole night out with them. When you see a success story like this, it makes everything worthwhile. And this is why we do what we do. This is not a 9-to-5 job. This is my hobby, and it's my passion. And I live my hobby. We need your help because it is labor intensive. You cannot believe it. Each pangolin needs to feed for about 8 to 10 hours a day. So it's one person who's got to be with that pangolin all the time. And when it comes in initially, it needs drips, and you've got to monitor it. And the only way to monitor its condition is to take blood. And we take blood from it on a weekly basis. Every time you take blood from it, you've got to anesthetize it. It's got to be supplemented with food every single day. It's tube fed with commercial supplements, and each time that requires an anesthetic. So the costs involved are astronomical.
I mean, I've seen that video about 20 times and it still gives me goosebumps. It's just amazing. I love it. Absolutely. Okay, let's crack on with some questions now from viewers, because they're starting to roll in thick and fast. So first question that's sort of come in is, are the previous modules still available for the cheetah and the rhino in particular? So yes, basically how this works is we've broken down a larger wildlife vet online course into individual standalone, but also can be taken as the big picture kind of wildlife vet online course into individual modules, so that you can start to go through the modules that you want, watch them individually or watch them as part of the bigger picture. So yes, they're still available, and I'll show you exactly where you can find them. If you go to that little link at the bottom of the screen, so Expedition Project website there, and you go onto the little courses page, you can see all the modules that are available there. And as and when we start to develop more, we're going to start to release this, and this is going to be part of a fantastic big picture. Okay, so let's have a look at what other questions have come in. So we've got one here that says, I was wondering how I might be able to get involved. I'm interested in going into wildlife zoo medicine, but I'm only in the second year now. Is it too early to do these courses, especially to qualify as EMS? This is my first time watching this live stream, so I'm a little bit confused, but super interested. Fantastic. Okay, cool. Well, I wonder, Nirvana, maybe you could take this, because you've been involved in the development of this from the start, and you know a little bit more about what the requirements are year by year and EMS and stuff like that. So what would your recommendation be to Hasita?
Sure. So, Hasita, I'm not sure which university your question comes from, but just talking from an Edinburgh student perspective, these courses we can all accumulate towards your clinical EMS. We know that for sure. We are waiting on confirmation here at Edinburgh as to whether we can count these courses as, your preclinical or your husbandry EMS. But I would say it's never too early to start. We've tried to make it so that the course is accessible to most year groups. Second year onwards should be fine. Obviously, there's some chat around the drugs that are used, but we don't go into we go into enough detail so that it isn't confusing, and hopefully the lessons are laid out so that they're easy to understand. So I would say that it's never too early to start reading up, or especially if wildlife or zoo vet med is your passion in the future. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so sorry about blocking your faces out there, Kat, Yashu, and Peter, for that question, but you're back there now, I can see. So next question is I love Peter's point on educating the locals, working with people, such an important aspect of conservation. And I agree. It's funny, I mean, I've been involved in charities and conservation work now for 15 years, and obviously not nearly as much experience and background as Peter, but from a working with a community point of view, that you can't have conservation without community education. It just does go hand in hand. It's just so important. So such a good point that Peter made, and thank you for raising it. Anyone who's posting questions, just a reminder that you may need to grant StreamYard permission to actually use your name. So in the link of this video, you'll see there's a little StreamYard link there, which if you just click on that, you can add, and then your name will actually pop up. You don't have to, but otherwise your name might just pop up as Facebook user. Okay, let's have a look and see what other questions we've got coming in. Okay, let's have a look. So here's one for you, Peter. Have you had a chance to see the birth of any pangolins? I imagine this would be quite rare. What are their living communities like?
Yeah, that's a big problem. It's part of the course. Again, because it's such an early field that we're going into, that we don't know much about it. We did have one born here a little while ago, and we really didn't have a clue what to do. We tried to rear it on these commercial sort of kitty milk supplements, and it lived for a while, but it didn't survive it. So we're still pretty much in the dark. That's why we get pretty much every female pangolin that we get in, particularly this time of the year, is pregnant. So often you only pick it up on the ultrasound. They're very early pregnant, but if you get one in that is heavily pregnant, you must make sure you get it in and out and healthy before they actually give birth in captivity, because it's a nightmare. You know, that because of the stress, the mother doesn't have milk, and also it's not the right conditions for the mother to rear a little baby like this. So now, we don't know much about it, but it happened once to us, and to me, I must be honest, it was once too many.
Wow. So, I mean, so just to give everyone a little bit of a heads up on the Pangolin module that's about to be released. So Peter goes into details about the treatments, the procedures, different examinations, physical, clinical, the blood works, and then starts to go into the offspring and the care and the re-release and all that kind of stuff. So super interesting module, and a lot of these modules follow the same kind of format where it's broken out into different sections. And for me, being a non-vet, I found it like fascinating, and the balance is so good because I can see where the detail that you guys will need is there, but then also it steps back and has a look at it from you know, stepping back overview kind of point of view as well. So I found it like an amazing balance on how it's coming across. Okay, so let's have a look and see if another questions come through here. So what infectious diseases do you commonly see in pangolins?
Okay, I mentioned earlier a little bit about babesiosis. It seems to be every single one. I don't know, are you guys familiar with the babesia parasite, babesiosis? Okay, it's an intracellular, intra-red blood cell parasite. I suppose almost like malaria in a way. It's transmitted by ticks. It's in dogs in this country, it's a huge thing, in cattle and horses and that. But also now in pangolins, you know, we found it quite by chance, but they've all got it in them, and under questions of, you know, under circumstances of stress, conditions of stress, it comes to the fore. And then, so that one could say is an infectious disease. The other one that we see commonly is pneumonia. Now, I wouldn't say that's an infectious disease, but the only truly infectious disease I would say is babesia that we're aware of. I hope there are no zoonoses, because I'm the firing line if there are. But yeah, as far as I know, it's only babesiosis at this stage. And then, yeah, obviously they get also helminths, internal parasites. We wouldn't call it an infectious disease. Yeah, I'd say probably babesiosis at this stage of our knowledge is the only one, perhaps, probably.
Okay. And another question has come in. What is it about pangolins that you love personally?
Yeah, I don't know. They're so sort of alien-like. They're just totally different to anything else that we know, that we work with. Yes, I don't know. It's just everything about it is just unique. You know, you can't help. I mean, my staff, I'll tell you, they drink, eat, and sleep pangolins. When this pangolin comes in, I know they can't look at it and watch it, but you know, they're wondering how it's going, because I don't know, they are just so different, and they are so sensitive to everything. I think they are probably highly intelligent. You know, when you just see that how they react to stress, and yeah, I don't know. I think what I like about it probably so much is that we know so little about them.
Okay. Let's see what else we got. So Max has sent in a question here. How many of these infectious diseases are zoonotic? Okay, yeah, we just alluded to that just now. None as far as I know, but you know, it's such an early field, you know, it's such a novel subject, you know, the pangolin. So there may be, you know, that we are unaware of. You know, I haven't checked to see, you know, maybe we should do, you know, check for maybe things like salmonella, you know, in the dung and that sort of thing. Because salmonella could easily be a zoonosis. But none of my staff have died, so I think so far so good. It's a good start, at least. So okay, so we're going to take a few more questions on pangolins, and then hopefully try and move onto elephants after that. I know a lot of people are excited to talk about the Ellies. Let's see, we've got another question that's come in. This one from Rebecca. You mentioned the regurgitation is a problem in pangolins when they're stressed. With the toothless jaw adaptation and the less bony, more muscular and flexible cheek, I was wondering, does this make regurgitation problematic for pangolins?
Yeah, certainly, but you know, with the toothless jaw and that sort of thing doesn't make really any difference, because once you see a pangolin with these symptoms, it's one-way traffic. The only reason that it's regurgitating is because the food can't go through into the duodenum, it is a symptom of stress, but we don't know why or what causes it. But once it's regurgitating, it's too late. So even the anatomy that it's got in the mouth and the neck, it's not going to contribute either way.
Love these questions that are coming in, and they're coming in thick and fast. So back to the panel, Nirvana, Izzy, Yashu, Katrina. Have you got any other sort of outstanding questions that you'd like to ask Peter on pangolins in particular? All good from Nirvana, Izzy? Anything from you?
Well, I was just wondering, because you were saying like quite a lot of them die, and probably a lot of people don't kind of have access to pangolins. I was wondering whether you ever did like or whether you always do post-mortems on them, or whether you ever do.
No, we have to. It's all part of the learning process. We do post-mortems on every single one. That's how we find out if they've got ulcers or something like that. And the same thing we were just talking about now, the hyperplasia of the pylorus valve. Those are sort of things you'd only find on post-mortem. You wouldn't find it on an X-ray. You might find it on an ultrasound, but you could just as easily miss it because you wouldn't be looking for it. So that we found it on a few pangolins now on post-mortem. So every single pangolin that dies, we do post-mortems, and then we send the carcasses up to the zoological gardens in Pretoria, where they've got a whole genetics program. So we do a genetics analysis on them as well. But yeah, the more post-mortems you can do, the better, because the more we're going to learn.
Do you share your data with people as well, or do you just keep it to yourself for like your own learning?
Oh, no, definitely not. So again, it's funny, interesting today. It's just coincidental. We had this meeting, and we're going to share it with, obviously, we're going to share it with everybody who wants to, but it's such a new field. There's very few papers that have been written on this sort of thing. But certainly, if anybody's interested in more information, we will give it. It's all, as I said earlier on, it was all about education. But saving one pangolin is not saving the species. So the more we learn, the more we can broadcast, the more we can teach people, the better. So yeah, every single bit of information is recorded and it's available, and I can get hold of it very, very easily.
Loving these questions. Yashu, anything else from you about pangolins in particular?
Nope, nothing about pangolins.
Okay, cool. Kat, how about you?
No, I think I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to some audience questions. So Yasita says, how long are these modules available for? So basically the way we've designed it, Yasita, is that we're encouraging people to take up a student membership so that they can have access to all things relating to these modules and these courses, as well as lots of other little bits around that as well. So we're developing lots of free courses to kind of complement all the hard work that Peter's been doing. So basically, as long as you've got the membership, you can have access to them as long as that, really. So we're trying to make it as collaborative and accessible for you as possible. But any more questions, just feel free to give us a shout. So let's see, Abby sent in a question. Is it important for pangolins to walk distances while eating, or would it be possible to have an ant farm or specific enclosed room that they can go and feed? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. These pangolins, an ant farm, and that's such a difficult. I think it's easy to say, but to actually have an ant farm, I don't know. We certainly don't have that technology here. So we or that ability here. I don't know. We walk them a lot, and the problem is in the drier years, the ant. The amount of ants is very, very low, so they've got to walk a lot further, and you've got to find areas where there is a high density of ants. So in the wet season, we just had early rains. Now we've had 70 mils of rain just in the last 3 or 4 days. Then the ant numbers obviously tend to multiply, and it's not an issue. But this an ant farm, I'd love to learn more about it. Is it a possibility? I don't even know. Maybe can give you some information, because I tell you, at night they walk for. I tell you, you've got to be pretty fit to keep up with it. Yeah, and it's nighttime. There's all things that they're walking in big 5 areas. With some of them here next door where I am. There's black rhinos, there's lions, there's elephants. So they walked with armed guards at night. So something like an ant farm would be wonderful. But none of us have have that ability or technology or knowledge to. So I'd be very interested to hear, if it's possible.
Sure, amazing. Abby, so why don't you send us in some details on creating our own ant farm, and we can maybe see if we can test that out. I love that question. That's fantastic. Okay, let's see. Sorry, go on, Peter. Yeah.
Sorry, it's also interesting. They're quite fussy. Some of them eat termites, other ones don't eat termites. Some eat this particular ant, other ones don't. So it's a nightmare actually. If you look at all of this, we've got the best medical technology perhaps available: X-rays, ultrasound, blood transfusions, everything like this, anesthetic machines. But if you don't have the right food, that animal's not going to thrive. They often come from places like Zimbabwe, and in Zimbabwe they've got different ants. Now we bring them here and we put them out at night to go and eat, and they don't know these ants. Yes, I tell you.
So complicated. Okay, let's have a look, see what else. So Francis says, how do the pangolins handle repeated anesthesia? Since you're using gas via mask, are there any concerns with them in a similar way to sort of a cat or a dog?
No, touch wood, we haven't had any problems with the anesthetic. We keep them very, very light, just under. And isoflurane is exceptionally well tolerated. And we in the beginning, we tube them with food twice a day, so they've got to be anesthetized twice a day. Some of them become very habituated if they've been for a long time, and then you can tube them with the food without an anesthetic. But generally speaking, twice a day, and then eventually at least once a day, because you can't walk with them for 8 or 10 hours a day, and they need to. Sometimes they walk longer. So there's no ways they're ever going to get enough natural food in. It's got to be supplemented. So we usually still tube them every day at least once, and they handle it very, very, very well. Even the ones that come in and they're so compromised, with the pneumonia and the dehydration and the malnutrition, they seem to handle it very well. But I don't want to tempt fate, so touch wood.
So obviously, just a reminder to everyone that we're speaking about the Pangolin module, which is just about to come out as part of the Wildlife Vet online course. And the questions that we're taking is part of the course. So anyone who's participated in these modules or just interested in what we're talking about, feel free to send questions through. We've got panel members from Edinburgh, Nottingham, and RBC. So these are your representatives from your universities. So if you've got any questions and you don't want to direct them to us now, you can obviously reach out to your representatives and they can help answer. They've been working their way through these modules, so they've got first-hand knowledge of exactly how much info is there, how much it's helped them, and so on and so on. Okay, so let's keep going with some questions. Loads coming in. So how much influence involvement do wildlife vets have when it comes to implementation of policies and laws to protect pangolins or endangered species in general?
That's a big question, eh? We often parts of a panel, because there's a lot of politics involved. I'm a syringe mechanic. I'm not involved with politics and that sort of thing. So we can be part of a multi-task or multi-talented team, that can give input into these sort of policies, most definitely. But it's left really to the what do you call them, the activists and the politicians to do it. But we do have a fair amount of input. But myself, I'll give advice and I'll give my input, but it's not it's just part of a much bigger team.
I mean, Peter, you're so humble, you really are. And the thing is about the amount that you've been involved in and the innovative stuff with regards to rhino, cheetah, now pangolins. I mean, you must be in the forefront of so many innovations and developments and everything. But your humble nature is just, it is incredible. And I've been learning so much, like just from all the little stories that you've been telling. And I'm sure everyone on the panel can agree with that. No,
Roger, I've been in this industry for many years, 35 years, and no man is an island, eh? I could never have done any of this on my own. It's all teamwork, all teamwork. And I've got people around me working with me who are passionate people, and to the extent that they don't take leave. And I've got to say, listen, Janelle, you've been here now for a year. It's time you go, no, but this, and who's going to help you? And I say, listen, you've also got another life, eh? And I've got to be quite firm with it. Because before life goes by, and all they've done is work. So it's all about teamwork and you'll never become rich in a wealthy in a sort of career. So you've got to decide. Do you want to have a great life, and which I have, and I wouldn't swap it anything, or do you want to be the richest guy in the graveyard?
Such a good point. I know Yashi will agree with me. She's always coming up with some nice quotes that we love adding to blogs and stuff like that. So you always manage to come up with something. I definitely think, Yashi, you're going to add that quote to your next blog, aren't you? I can see.
I'm writing it right now as we speak. I'm typing.
So we're going to take one more question on pangolins and then move on to elephants. So Francis has just said, have you been able to reference any kind of other literature or anything like that with links to anteaters or anything like that? Is there any crossover with any other species?
Okay, there is a bit of reference with the Asian pangolins. Okay, so we do rely on that quite a lot, and over the years now we have built up quite a library of pangolins when they come in and when they leave. So we've got some fairly good reference values of our own, but certainly we also do compare them a lot to the Asian pangolins. And then the dosages we use for drugs, like antibiotics and that sort of thing, is basically based on cat dosages. That's everything we use is off-label. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. So I think that's going to cover our little pangolin section tonight. How's the panel feeling? Are we okay to crack on with elephants now? We ready for that? Brilliant. Okay. So let's watch a little preview video of a procedure that Peter did on the elephant snare not too long ago, and this is all going to be part of the elephant module, which will be the next module after the pangolins. So feel free, just a reminder, feel free to post questions about cheetah, rhino, pangolins, but now ideally send some questions in for elephants or anything you want to know about that, because this module is going to probably be released towards the end of October. Let's have a look at this. So fascinating video and case study there. So, so Peter, I mean, I wouldn't have even thought that snaring with elephants was an issue. I always think like sort of smaller animals or smaller mammals and stuff like that. But is that a common thing around the Hoedspruit and Kruger National Park area?
Yeah, a lot of these snares are maybe set for like giraffe and buffalo and that sort of thing, and the elephant sort of gets stuck in there just by accident. That's why you get a lot of the snares around the feet in it. But in certain places, they do go for the elephants, although the chances of keeping an elephant in a snare are not very good. So the elephants really are caught, as like a side thing. It's just they're caught by accident. But we see a lot of that snaring, but particularly around the feet, a lot. Just it's for meat poaching for other species, but these elephants are sort of collateral damage.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've got in mind for the elephant module and some of the things you're going to be talking about there?
Okay, there's going to be a little bit of humor in there as well. There has to be. There's going to be a few things to show that things don't always go according to plan and can be quite funny. But I think, one mustn't take life too seriously. Even when you're studying these modules or watching them, there's always a little bit of humor involved. So I'll show a few things against myself that had happened to me. One, in fact, that happened to me on Sunday. So we're going to be doing starting off with the general immobilization techniques, the animal lying down, and the sort of work that we do on them sometimes. And then the newest thing we've been doing is standing sedations. And these are animals that, in this particular case, these animals that came from Zimbabwe. They were rescued because their mothers were culled in the culling programs in Wankie Game Reserve. And bearing in mind, and that's another issue for another day of discussion, is that once you put 4 fences around a place, you've got to manage it. So whether it be by culling or translocation. So in those days, it was impossible to move adult elephants, so they had to be culled. So these youngsters were left behind. And anyway, so these youngsters were taken to a sanctuary just outside Rari. And then with all the land grabs and that, these animals would have been killed. So we went up there at night. And we darted them on the polo field at night, and we brought them through to South Africa. So they're very habituated. So when I work on them, I can work on them actually standing, but they've got to be asleep, because some of this one on Sunday had an abscess, so a painful procedure. So that's sort of fairly new technology and new methods. And then injuries, basically, the type of snares that we see. And then very important is the orphans, elephant orphans, and they are an absolute nightmare. I promise you. That's, if you want to really punish me, phone me in the middle of the night and say you've got a baby elephant calf coming in, because that, as I said, now pangolins love dying, horses love dying, sheep love dying, but the elephant calf is the world champion. It's the world champion. If you can get an elephant calf through, you deserve a medal. They you can, I always say that, and we've got a couple through, and the one I'm going to show you on the presentation is actually a little albino calf. It was born in the wild, but it was caught in a snare, and the snare went through its mouth like this and behind its ears. So when they got it, it couldn't drink or anything, and the herd had left it. So we took it, and they are so difficult. The Americans who are really, really good, because with their captive facilities, and elephants being born in captivity and being rejected, and that they made a milk supplement called Grover's milk supplement, and even that doesn't work. And I promise you, the Americans are really, really good with this sort of thing. So it's a lot of hit and miss. My feeling is that you can take an elephant, a calf, and you can clone it, so it's genetically the same. And you can have 2 of them, and you give both of them the same formula, and the one will die and the other one will thrive. And I can't tell you why. They also very stress susceptible. They obviously herd animals, so we put little sheep in with them. We have to give them plasma transfusions because they've got chronic diarrhea, and it's a mission. It's a mission, and very, very costly. I know in Kenya they use the basics. They don't have the sort of same resources that what we do from a nutritional point of view, and they tell you that they've got such and such amount of success, but they don't tell you about the ones that die. And I can tell you now, most of them die. So yeah, they also a nightmare.
So,
so that's it. And pardon?
No, sorry, go on.
Yeah, also, the sort of things that the ones that are sort of habituated, the captivity, the deworming, and I don't know, my assistant Janelle, who's worked with me for 16 years now, and knows more than most vets. She's doing the elephant one, and she's already got 70 odd slides, and she says she hasn't even started yet. So maybe she's got to teach me a few things as well, because 70 slides is a lot, and she says she hasn't started. So this could be the longest module yet.
Wow. So we're going to take just a couple more questions, and we'll have to finish up the stream for tonight. Obviously, South Africa is an hour ahead, so we want to give Peter a chance to go and have a beer at the end of his day and go and relax a little bit. So send or whiskey. I know you do love a whiskey. So if you've got any questions, please just post them in the comments now so we can try and get to that. But if you don't manage to post your questions, or you're watching us on replay, you can always send your questions into the comments at any time, and one of the panel or myself will get around to answering it at some point. Just a reminder, the modules that are available are on the Expedition Project website, and we're talking about elephants right now. So let's have a look and see. We've got a question from Natika. It says, do you tend to see more elephants with infectious diseases, and if so, which diseases? Or is it usually an elephant that's been physically injured?
Yeah, I don't know whether you people are aware of the elephant die-off in Botswana. Yeah, unfortunately, the diseases we see, once we see them, the animals are usually dead, and they die, quite a lot of them, like en masse. For example, a few years ago in the dry times in Kruger, they had like a mice population explosion, and the mice carry this encephalomyocarditis virus, and by defecating and urinating on the grass, this virus is spread, and these elephants picked it up, and elephants died en masse in Kruger. I've actually had two elephant calves die now in captivity from the same thing. And the theory is that, you've got all these bales of lucerne or alfalfa, whatever you like to call it, in the stables, and these mice come and urinate and defecate on the grass. So I'm petrified of it, because the last two elephant calves we've had have died of that. So encephalomyocarditis virus, which is fatal. The other one, which I've just seen in Botswana now, is this toxic blue algae, microcystis, I think it is. And I've seen it in rhinos. I've actually seen it in rhinos. Microcystis is this algae that grows in these dams, and in the dry months, when the water actually reduces in volume, and with the wind it gets blown to the side, and these animals take it in, and it's an acute liver necrosis, acute liver poisoning. And then I believe the ones now in Botswana died, and also 300 or 400 died of a neurotoxin produced by some algae. I'm not sure which one it was. And then, of course, also anthrax. Don't forget anthrax. We see anthrax, funny enough, in Namibia. It's got different epidemiology. In South Africa, it's different to in Namibia. For example, in Namibia, the two species that are affected the most by anthrax are zebra and also elephant. Now, Namibia, when they built all those roads, they had these gravel pits next to the roads. And as you all know, the anthrax is spread by vultures. And so the elephants die of anthrax and zebra. In Kruger, it's different species, but elephants also die of anthrax. So any of the diseases that you see with elephants are usually, by the time you see them, they're dead or they're going to die. They had a syndrome in Zimbabwe many years ago called floppy trunk disease. That was in the area of Lake Kariba. And to this day, they're still not sure what actually caused it. These animals, their trunks were paralyzed. They were not able to feed or use their trunks for drinking or eating. And to eat, they'd actually stick their whole head into a bush to chew. And to drink, they'd stick their whole head in the water. Now, they don't know what that was. They doubt whether it was an infectious disease, but they think it might be due to some heavy metal contamination of the dam, from the river upstream. I think those are the ones I can think of offhand now. Those are the sort of, so most diseases that you see the animal is dead or is going to die.
Well, thank you so much for that question, Natika, and thank you, Peter. Okay, let's take a couple more, then we're going to have to end it for tonight. I mean, the stream has already gone well over now because there's just so much to speak about. And obviously, just a reminder that these will be monthly live streams going direct to your society members page, so exclusive to you guys. So yeah, just if you're watching this on replay, get questions ready for next time so you can get involved. We've got another question from Hasita. It says, why do you see chronic diarrhea so much in baby elephants? I'm sure you're going to cover this in the actual module, but do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yes. Again, elephant mother's milk, firstly, they are totally allergic to normal cow's milk butterfat. So skim milk, is a starting thing. But the problem with the elephant, the mother's milk changes on a daily basis, the composition. So the milk that you see in the beginning is totally different to the milk you see at the end of the lactation. Another thing is they also lactose intolerant, so that's another problem. Like for example, the closest oil or fat to the elephant milk fat is coconut oil. So it's really, really difficult, and so all these, they've got so many of these intolerances. We add enzymes to the mixture to try and help with the digestion, but the problem is we just cannot get close enough to the mother's milk, and the mother's milk also is changing all the time. We do from time to time also get infections like E. coli and Salmonella, but it's usually the diarrhea that we see is usually a nutritional diarrhea. And even in Kenya, Daphne Sheldrick and them have done many elephants, bred many elephants and done fantastic work. The first little elephant that I was involved in rearing, Jabulani, he had diarrhea, and when I spoke to Daphne Sheldrick, she said, "No, diarrhea is normal." She said, "It's completely normal, but she says, and I'll never forget her words. She said, if it separates into curds and whey, then you've got a problem. But he said, if it's homogeneous diarrhea, don't worry." Difficult as a vet to accept that, but she's pretty much right.
And this is something for those of you that haven't done any of the modules yet that Peter's been doing. The humor that is injected into it is brilliant. So there's definitely a good balance of all things going on, which is fantastic. So I'm going to just take one more question from the audience, and then just hand over one last time to the panel, see if there's anything else they want to ask Peter before we let him go and have his whiskey for the night. So let's have a look. Speaking of sort of disease and viruses and stuff like that, so this person says, "I'm under the impression that elephants' herpes virus affects Asian elephants significantly. Is it the same for the African elephant?" Okay, yeah, sorry, I forgot about this. Very important and a very, very good question. The elephant herpes virus in Asian elephants is usually fatal, whereas the same herpes virus in African elephant, what you see, and I've seen it quite often, is you get like it's almost like a cold sore. It's a herpes virus, almost like a cold sore you see on the trunk of the animal. I've seen it several times. Often it usually just disappears on its own. I've had to once or twice actually cut them out. It's usually your younger animals, that are a little bit stressed perhaps. But yeah, sorry, I forgot about this completely. But it's interesting that the way it's expressed in the African and the Asian elephant are totally different. The Asian elephant usually inevitably fatal. African elephant, it's usually a localized lesion. Good question. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for all these questions. As I say, feel free to keep sending them in even after this live stream's over, and we'll do our best to come back to them next time or answer them in between. So just back to the panel now. How about you guys? Is there anything? I'm sure you're itching to ask the odd sort of elephant questions. Anything from anyone? Nirvana, have you got anything to start us off that you'd like to know?
No, I suppose my first instinct is to ask when the elephant course will be available for everyone, in case anyone at home as well is wondering. I'm keen to. I love elephants, so keen to know when that one's going to be out. Well, I think we're probably aiming for the end of the month, are we, Peter? Yeah, Janelle's already. She's working like 8 hours a day on that, because we've got, as I said, I've got about 15,000 slides there. So, and she's also got a lot. So she's working through. And when we started taking these photographs and videos, that we didn't have, files of all the stuff. You can just look it up. So she's going through a lot of them individually, and I take my hat off to her. Yeah, so that'll be maybe the next 2 weeks. But also, I think the elephants will be a bit easier for me than the pangolins, because it's a more familiar species that we work on a lot more. And quickly, what I wanted to say before we finish off is that a lot of the module is going to be on how we capture adult elephants. And I'm telling you, up until about, I guess, 15 years ago, we couldn't capture adult elephants just because of the sheer logistics and the size. But I mean, now you must see how we do it. I mean, we pick them up, big bull elephant, you pick him up by his 4 legs, and you with a crane, and you load him on top of a truck. It's the logistics is amazing, and it's revolutionized elephant capture and relocation over the years.
Because what used to happen in the early days is, for example, they'd catch all these baby elephants in the culling in Kruger. They'd catch the baby elephants and transport them to various reserves. And then they start becoming delinquents. You know, they've got no guidance. They don't have big bull elephants to actually dominate them. And they come into must too early. And then they start killing rhinos and they go ballistic. So as soon as, you know, they were really like little ducktails. They were really little hooligans, 15-year-old monsters. And as soon as we were able to transfer family groups and big bulls, it changed the whole scenario.
Oh, wow. So unfortunately, we've lost Kat. She just sent in her apologies. She's been having some Wi-Fi issues during the live stream tonight. So we'll say a premature goodbye to her. Thanks for joining us, Kat. So Izzy and Yashi. Sorry, say again.
She looked like she was skiing. There was something, she was all over the place.
Trying to find the best signal, I think, wherever she was.
Okay.
So yeah, just as maybe a final something from Izzy and Yashi. Anything you want to ask Peter about elephants in particular? How about you, Izzy?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like I love the elephant video that you put up before. So as I was watching it, I was just thinking, like, do you have like problems with the rest of the herd when you're dealing with one elephant? Because I assume they kind of stick around, but.
Yeah, you know, most of those, I won't say all, but most of those sort of immobilizations we do from the air. And then the pilot chases the rest of the herd away. If you've got a youngster, that can be a problem. But generally speaking, you know, these animals that are badly injured like that one, they tend to lag behind a little bit. But it's a good question. It's something you've always got to be on the lookout for. You always have a vehicle handy, and we've always got armed guards, because you tend to get engrossed in what you're doing, and then you don't see what the animals are coming back. But generally speaking, we don't have too much of a problem, unless it's a calf, because then the herd is going to be more sensitive to that little individual.
Such a good question. Yashu, anything Ellie related from you?
Yeah, but my question isn't very biology. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, because I was raised in an Indian family, so we unfortunately have loads of ivory, and I was pretty old when I figured out that was a bad thing. I was wondering if it's like a similar picture, like with the attitude to ivory where you work.
Yeah, you know, this is you can almost compare it to rhino horn as well. And again, you know, I've got my own you know, perceptions or my own opinions on it. And again, you know, nobody's perfect, but everybody's entitled to an opinion. And because somebody's got a different opinion to you, doesn't mean that they're wrong. I've got, you know, the byproducts of, for example, and it's going to have to happen in Kruger. They haven't culled for a long time. They are destroying that area. But now Kruger is surrounded by 4 fences. So when you've got a place that's surrounded by 4 fences, you have to manage it. You cannot just let the animals multiply. And because it's got 4 fences around it, there's no movement, there's no migration. So the animals are pretty much stuck in one place, and they're breeding. So you've got to control the numbers one way or the other. So eventually they're going to have to start culling. Now you've got all this ivory. If you can control the sale of it, why not? That money can be plowed back into conservation. They can put it back into the anti-poaching units. They can maintain their roads, improve their roads. You know, I just think it's a waste. To be honest, I think it's a waste. I saw that video many years ago in Kenya where they piled all that big stockpile of ivory and they burnt it. I don't see the sense in that. I really don't see it. And people say, but how do you know it's legal or illegal? I said, well, that's not my problem. I'm not a policeman. But, you know, it can be done. And I believe the same about rhino horn. And rhino horn is the only one of the very few wildlife products that's sustainable. You can cut the rhino horn off and the rhino doesn't die. So yeah, that's another story for another day. But yeah, okay. But I've got no issue if ivory is not poached and it's gone through the legal channels and it's animals that have been you know, that have maybe hit by a train or culled. You know, so be it. But obviously the illegal trade is a big problem. And you know, I can't say where your ivory at home came from. But a very good question. But I believe it's sustainable use. That's everything in the world is about, sustainable use.
definitely. And I don't know if anyone's watched the new David Attenborough movie on Netflix. I mean, it's touching on so many of these aspects actually, and I think a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about in these modules as well is so interlinking, into the biodiversity and ecosystems that we live in. So I think even someone who's not, a vet student, per se, actually, I think there's so many interesting aspects to these courses as well. And I know we've now complemented these with, ecology courses and zoology elements, bits and pieces. So, I mean, it's been a fascinating journey for me, and just so grateful for everyone that's been involved so far in this. We're going to finish off tonight with that, but just to remind everyone, the first Tuesday of every month, we're going to be right back here with another live stream and having a nice long chat with Peter. And by the time we speak to you next, obviously the pangolin module will be out, the elephant module will be out, so we'll be able to go into even more detail on that, and then start to speak about what's coming up in the future as we dive into winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in South Africa. But just a big thank you, first of all, to Peter. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and all your insights and wisdom and experience. It's just absolute pleasure. Love speaking to you. So thank you so much. Can I just say one thing quickly, please, Roger? Of course. I just wonder if maybe the ladies can just, I do tend to speak on these modules. I maybe speak very fast. I don't know, maybe not loud enough. Too many ums and ahs and that. I just really like, and I won't take it personally, I just like, if I must slow down, talk louder, talk softer, whatever, because it's a totally new thing for me. And I'm talking to a blank screen. So any sort of constructive criticism, please, don't hesitate. Because all Roger says to me, I said, Roger, didn't I say, no, perfect. No, I don't believe that. So he's just trying to stay in my business.
Personally.
Pardon?
Personally, I love how candid the recordings are. I think I would. It clearly comes from a place of joy when you're doing these presentations, and I just really enjoy the fact that they flow really nicely. I wouldn't worry about the ums and the ahs. I think we all say that, and I've had no trouble understanding any of the presentations so far. So
there's also been some background noise. I don't know whether it's why. I spoke to Roger yesterday about the background noise. There's some sort of like crackling, and I don't know. You girls you haven't come across that. You haven't noticed that. Okay. No, good.
All good outside. No, I mean, I think, Peter, the nice thing is that we're not massively overproducing these courses. It's pretty much it's to the point. We're just cracking on and getting the information out there, trying to make it as accessible as possible. And we've been speaking to Izzy, Yashu, and Nirvana and Kat and universities about what our goals are with these courses. And the three elements that we came up with, one was that obviously wants them to be credible, and that's you're coming in with so much experience and the balance of the way you're delivering everything is fantastic. So umming and ahhing is no issue at all. And collaboration is such a big thing for us. So just like you said, now you're asking for how does it come across? What does it sound like? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And stuff like that. And that's so important for us. So anyone watching or anyone having done any of the modules of these courses, just send in recommendations, feedback, and stuff like that. We're always developing stuff and always working on it. And we want them to be as relevant and as beneficial for you as possible. So that's very, very important for us. And then the last thing is just accessible, really. So as Nottingham, Edinburgh, and RVC knows, we're trying to make these as accessible as possible. And that's why we've broken it up into these module chunks rather than having a massive kind of big, daunting course ahead of you that could be 15, 20, 30 hours of sort of online work. This is broken down into smaller elements of 2-3 hours at a time, and it gives you the chance to work through it at your own pace, work through it, within your sort of affordability options and stuff like that. And what's so exciting is we're going through this. You guys are going through this as the first cohort, so we're offering it out to you so that you can help us develop this in the future. Because in 2021, Peter and I are going to be working on this, bigger and better in so many more different areas. So we want your feedback to help us develop this. And the exciting thing is you doing this as the first cohort, which is incredibly exciting for me. Sorry, go on, Peter.
Yeah, that's critical because I'm always finding it a little bit difficult at what level to pitch it at. So I think at the moment it's fairly anecdotal, and I don't know whether they want more details on the drugs, or is it just an overall view, principles rather than detail? I just need to know the sort of level at which to I don't want to bore them as well with all detail and stuff that they won't really ever have to know or use. I mean, I can't turn them into an overnight vet, into a wildlife vet overnight and over a TV screen. So exactly. I think it's more about principles and problems and unique features to each animal. That's the way I'm looking at it now. But if they want more depth, I can do that. But I think you might fall asleep.
Well, I think the balance is amazing, and we'll keep asking. And so Nirvana, Izzy, Yashu, keep speaking to your members and keep asking, what it is they want more of and what we can focus on more of, and we can always work around that. But yeah, we should go now. We've had a fantastic long live stream. So just thank you so much to everyone again. As I said, thank you to Peter, thank you to Nirvana, thank you to Izzy, thank you to Yashu, thank you to Kat, who had to duck out a little bit earlier. And thank you to all of you, the members of those 3 societies, for joining in tonight. Please keep sending in your feedback, your comments, your questions, anything like that. We'd love to hear from you. But thank you so much to everyone. And yeah, we'll see you again this time. So the first Tuesday of next month. So we're going into November already for the next one. I can't even believe it. But yeah, so we'll see you in a month's time for the next one. Just thank you so much to everyone, and have a fantastic evening. All right, bye everyone.
Stay
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.